Dawn's Minnie's back. She's back for a service. It's probably done, from all reports from Nev, maybe a couple of 1,000 kilometres. A couple of minor things which we'll attend to, but generally, I drove it today and I'm quite happy with the way it's driving. The carburetor's not the greatest, as I'm expecting maybe some garbage in there. But generally, I'm reasonably happy. Nev and his family have been driving her, and it's been doing quite well. Just back for a check over and a tune-up. Already done point gap check. That's points are still within the spec. That's okay. Carburetor, I've checked that was a little bit loose. I'm using a vacuum gauge to check for variations, so it would be around about 15-20 inches of mercury. You push on the carburetor and the idle would change and the vacuum would change. So we've got a little bit of squash here. The springs, I've done the bolts up a little bit, pulls a bit more tension on the springs. Next is pull the plugs out, check and adjust the rockers because they'll need doing. Also, I found that the vacuum line for the brake booster happens to be EFI hose, which you can't use for vacuum. EFI hose is constructed for pressure this way, and booster hose is constructed for pressure this way. They don't work together. What can happen, and probably has happened, is over a period of time that will suck in closed and hold vacuum on the booster. The booster then overrides the amount of pressure on your foot, affects the way the brakes work. Get this thing to focus. Vacuum hose. So it's constructed differently because of the pressure difference. So that will be going on the car. After a rather extensive rebuild like this one's had, what I will normally do, and which I've done here, is we've run in oil, mineral-based oil inside the engine. This happens to be a Mini, so gearbox and engine are the same. So I'll pull the sump plug out, run it into a clean container. That container's been wiped out so you can see nice and clean. So we can look for anything that may be in the oil. Let's drop this out and have a look. Here it comes. So, little fairy on the magnet, and the oil's draining into the container. So we'll have a look once it's empty. Sump plug, magnet. So this is what I wiped off of the magnet. Wiped it here and ran the magnet back over it to get rid of the grey sludge. And this is what was left over. So considering the failure that we had with the other gearbox, I think that's probably not too bad. All in all, I'm pretty pleased. I'll show you a video of what I've done with the oil filter housing. I didn't like the way it was designed. You'll see that in a minute. All the years I've worked on Minis, these things constantly leak. So the only way I found to stop these things from leaking is to fit one of them. Not overly happy with the way it's designed. What I want to do is modify this port a little bit, because Nev has been driving this quite a bit and he has had no problem with oil pressure, oil starvation, no reporting of any of those concerns. But for my peace of mind, I'm going to do a slight modification here. Step one, increase the diameter of this port with one of these. There we go, so that's all the way through. Get some light underneath. That's now the same diameter right through. To finish that off, this little buff here and that there. So I'm pretty happy with that. So now can you visualise where the port in the block is, just there, and the port in the housing is, and you can see there's a transition between that port in the block and the port in the housing. So you get nice even flow. There we go, back together. Next is pull the plugs out, check and adjust the rockers because they'll need doing. Something to watch when you're doing rockers, especially older cars like this. If you watch what this rocker is doing, you can see it rocking over. So that shaft is worn. That's pretty much going to happen with everything. So with that sort of wear, you're going to have a little bit of rocker noise. This adjustment, I try and do them up a little bit firmer because the wear on the shaft will be at the base of that shaft. They're all the same. So I can get a bit of shot of this one. Can you see that? That's pretty common for older rockers, and that's a good set. And always as you're doing tune-ups and things like that, my lovely wife went and bought me a Danish. You always got to have one of them. As I suspected, I've turned it over, and this one here, we've got plenty of room. That needs adjusting. This one's nice. This one needs a whisker of adjustment, and this exhaust one, that needs adjusting. But the others were okay. To be aware of, if you're doing, this is a new engine. It's had probably 1,000 k's of driving on it, I'd assume, from the reports I've got back. After a drive cycle, like 1,000 kilometres after being assembled, you go through and check all your rockers, and you find that you've got a rocker that you have to keep adjusting. You can't see anywhere here. There's an excessive wear in the rocker shaft progressively. Potentially you have a problem where the cam is wearing excessively quickly. That's just something to be mindful of. But after you've adjusted this, maybe 12 months again, 12 month service, after a few 5 to 10,000 k's, readjust them. And if you've got very little adjustment, a little bit of adjustment, that's acceptable. If you've got excessive, you need to start looking for wear. This one's fine. Now it's set the ignition timing and carburetor response. I'm not very happy with it. It's backfiring through that choke. So I think I'll have to pull it apart and give it a clean. Can you see what I can see? It looks like moisture to me. Maybe why we are not getting a good idle. Now, pulled the carburetor apart, blown all the jets out, cleaned all the ports. It's idling far better, and the response is good now. There's a minor coolant leak coming through that stud. That stud actually goes through the head into the water jacket. So I took the stud out, cut a slot in it so I could screw it out, put some thread sealer on it, screwed it back in, put the nut on it, tightened it up. These studs probably should have been a little bit longer. That's all we've got to work with, so that's got plenty of tension on it, so is that. These ones I'll tighten up now. That should stop weeping correctly. I'll probably get rid of this boot out of here because that'll be full of gunk. That's like a filter. The filter's the coolant running through the block. It did have a lot of garbage in it before. I think I've got a video of that which I can show you. That'll probably get out and cleaned. That's that coolant filter sock I was talking about. You can see it's got some small shale in it. It's now with the sock turned inside out to, that was in here. You see some garbage floating around in there, so I was in two minds whether to put it back in, but I'm going to wash that and put it back in, just so I can keep this from getting into the radiator. So this is that filter that goes into the top radiator tank. So there has to be some sort of restriction, but the amount of restriction this generates is very little. But for the sake of saving some of that corrosion coming through into the tank and blocking the radiator, I think I'll put that back in. And the car's installed. I push the screwdriver through so it goes all the way out to the back of the tank, out here, so it doesn't ball up just inside the neck. So that's all the way through. Turn it back so it clamps against the hose. So you've got flow goes right through there. And you saw how little flow, little restriction it is when it's on the tap water flying through it. I wasn't happy with this stud. This was still weeping. So the problem we got is that this is the stud that was in there, which is a little bit too short, so it's not bottoming out into the block where the thread sealer needs to seal, and that needs to bottom out to seal up against the casting in the cylinder head. So this is the old stud, which has got a little bit more thread to it. The thread is a bit damaged, so I've gone into work, grabbed a tap and a die and recut that thread. So I can put some thread sealer on here, screw that into the head. Hopefully it'll seal once it gets to the base. Put some sealant on here between that plate and the thermostat cover. Put a flat washer on here with some sealant on it. Then tighten it down, and hopefully the thread that I've repaired is sufficient enough to hold some tension. Wish me good luck. That one's in, screwed all the way down till it stops, so that should seal into the cylinder head and stop the coolant coming up through the thermostat housing. This is in, I've put some silicone on the bottom of this gasket, the bracket, some silicone on the flat washer, and done the nut up. We'll let that cure overnight and give it a run tomorrow, see if that holds up. That's what we're up to this week. Thanks for watching. See you next week when I get back to the Mini.